LensVid coverage of IBC 2023 is brought to you by Ulanzi Video Accessories, Small Rig, Big Dreams, Jiyun, Make It Real, and Godox, Embrace Creative Possibilities. Hi, we're at IBC 2023, and we're at the Sony booth, and we're talking to Yann Salmon. Hello, Yann.
Hello, Ido.
And it's great seeing you again, I think, for the 10th time.
Yes.
We lost count, but I think it's the second time here in IBC.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Yes, and you have, let's start with something that you just recently announced. It's a BURANO camera.
Yeah,
I'm pronouncing it.
The star of the show, let's say.
Yeah,
especially for us, BURANO. Was announced last week. So
I saw it, I think, downstairs. Maybe before we actually go and talk about the camera itself, where did the name came from?
That's a good question. As you probably know, our top range in cinema camera is Venice. So in this period, I believe we wanted to keep, this notion of the high-end camera with the new one, with the BURANO. And BURANO actually is a small island next to Venice. And BURANO also have the particularity to have very colorful houses. So that's also to represent the high quality of color reproduction of the camera and our cinema line, especially the Venice and the BURANO, that are sharing the same image quality level.
Okay, so that's actually bringing us to the next question. Who is this camera for? I mean, you have the Venice, which is a very, very high-end camera, like film and in the film industry and maybe the high-end commercial. And you have the FX9, which is like lower but still high-end camera. And this sits, I think, in the middle between them, right? Both in price and...
It's a bit different. It's not really in the middle. The idea of BURANO is to have Venice image quality through the sensor. So we, as you know, probably we can shoot 8K and 8.6K as a base sensor with XOCN, LT. So it's bringing the quality, but with 30% less size and weight. So the idea of the BURANO is, first of all, to aim at solo shooters or also very small production teams. And that's really the first idea to gain this productivity, is this term of portability, within the cinema line and breaking those barriers of cinema in cinematography. To do that as well, what was needed was to bring something new, so the autofocus. So that's where you see all the relationship now between alpha, cinema line, and all that start to break itself in a very nice manner, and we're coming now to maturity. And alpha autofocus system, especially the basic AI tracking system, now entering the cinema world. That is a big thing because it's the first camera full frame that has autofocus and that has also stabilization. And on top of that, we are topping the cake with the cherry that is the ND Auto ND filter.
This is one of the next questions.
I was guessing so. So this package, so then to come back to your initial question, who is it for? So of course it will be aiming at people that are looking for a really cinematic look, very high quality. So we're talking about documentary, high-end documentary, wildlife, for example.
BBC, something like that.
For example, but also maybe sport documentaries. Then you have also all the TV production that are doing high cinematic quality content. Can be studio shots. Some studios are working, in music, late evening music shows where the cinematic feeling is very important, or even some reality TVs also are looking for this special touch.
They sometimes need relatively small cameras because they move a lot.
Exactly, and they might have many and hidden or in different parts. And then of course comes the cinematographic side of things, where we talked about a bit earlier, smaller crews and so on, or a big camera as well. So that's around about the target.
The target audience.
It's quite wide in the end. And when we see the excitement at IBC that happens even from broadcast side, many broadcasters are now looking at that. That sounds quite interesting because of course it's much more approachable in terms of pricing as well than the Venice. So yes, it's a quite large target.
You can buy, I think, 3 BURANO for one lens. Is it available already? I'm not sure.
No, it would be spring 24. So yeah, there is a
wait.
Of weights.
Okay, and probably by then maybe some of the menus. We looked at the menus of the BURANO. Is it more similar to the FX6 or 9 or to the Venice?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a bit more similar than the FX6.
Okay.
But you find the same, I would say, layout or logic than the Venice. So you will find, for example, the dual ISO setup, and well, I think I invite you a bit later
to play with it and see. Yeah, we shot some B-roll of that. Okay, fantastic. Going back to what you said before, I think this is the first camera where you integrated both IBIS and variable ND filter. Because the FX6, for example, has a variable ND filter, but it doesn't have the IBIS. So what were you able to do that you weren't able to do before in terms of technology to integrate both of this?
So I would say simply things goes forward and the evolution as any device. So
you miniaturize some.
Yeah, I think overall, I think that I'm not an engineer. I won't tell you that. So I don't have the details how they did it, but most likely they couldn't do it before for a technical reason. After, there are also choice in terms of product positioning. So when you're thinking about the Burano, the size is much smaller than the Venice, but it's big enough to have the space to have both the ND filter and the stabilization.
Yeah.
If you want to ask me, should we put ND
you already anticipate my question.
Okay, so and it's the same. It's always demand versus product positioning and pricing. So in the end, if we put ND filter stabilization in an alpha, it's not an alpha anymore because it probably will be bigger and more heavy and probably more expensive.
That's super alpha, something like that.
So that's why, and it's same on the FX series. That could be a good question on the.
Maybe
FX.
It's something. Well, you can't really comment on it, but it maybe makes sense to have something which is between the FX6 and the FX3 that will be in between sizes, but also.
Yeah, but that would.
But you can say
that would be another camera and another lines.
And that actually brings us to the next question, as always. No, but talking about lines, you have a lot of lines, different lines of cameras, and we talked before this interview about some of them actually being interlapping in some degree. So you have the Alpha line, which inside you have the A7 series, you have the A7R series, you have the A7S series, the A1, which is still in that series, and the A9, which is now, I think, the A9 Mark II is 4 years?
4 years.
Yeah, something like that. So you have those cameras, you have the A7C, which you recently introduced two new cameras to that line. And of course, you have the ZV line, which is created.
Vlog lines.
Exactly. And then you have the FX line. So there's a lot of lines and a lot of cameras inside each of them. And I'm thinking, it's great. The variety is fantastic, but it means that you're investing a lot in cameras and in lenses. I'm not saying that you're not investing in lenses, but as a creator, ourselves, we feel that we would really like to see an ecosystem from Sony. We would like to see more accessories which connect directly with some of your basically features. If this is like the ability to connect to the smart hot shoe that you have, the MI shoe, or directly to the camera as wireless control, maybe controlling several cameras, all sorts of things like that. So I know it's not really a question. It's more like, is it something that Sony is aware of, let's say?
Yeah, so I think you summarized well, first of all, the different lines. But before going into the question why we're not doing more accessories, each line has its purpose, and each line has its type of customer and I would say specific usage. So sometimes I believe you're right. There are a little bit of step over between a 7S Mark III, an FX3, and a ZV-1. Probably there are a lot of similarities.
And the A7C, I think, for the new A7.
Yeah, so and it's true, there are a lot of similarities, but there are answers for each of them. So if we talk about the C series, we are more on I would call it an urban camera, a camera for people that want to do street photography or travel, but want to keep the viewfinder a little bit more arty, I would say, profile of photographer that want to do also video. While the ZV-1, you are on a pure content creator, video.
No viewfinder.
No viewfinder, etc. With all the stuff you need for video making. While the S series is more a camera that is a transition between people coming from DSLR / mirrorless culture that move to video making.
Then you have the FX3, which is like fully.
That's when you go for filmmaking. So you see what I mean. So you will say, but would it be enough? Potentially yes, but every time we launch those concepts, it's working well, and people adopting the new camera, and so it seems that we are right.
Yeah.
So sorry, I was
people are buying. Yeah, no, but
was a bit long. But coming back to the question of accessory, why we don't drop the main body to do more accessory? Yeah, well, after it's probably simply also a business decision at some stage. And I think we already talked about it a year ago, 2 years ago maybe. But
you should watch the video from last year.
But the complexity is also when you are in a domain of accessory, it's extremely specialized.
Yeah.
So you have companies very specialized in gimbals. You in the cinema world, in cranes and all the supportive, the cages and so on. So you have companies that are extremely dynamic, very, very, I would say, adaptable to the new markets. And bigger company probably needs more time in terms of research and development, proof of concept, quality insurance and so on. That probably would take a lot of resources in a market that is extremely competitive and very settled, where the accessory brand are extremely strong in terms of branding.
Yeah.
So then you have to decide, is it worse or not going into a fight against the biggest accessory maker? It doesn't mean we don't do accessory and we don't use the MI shoe you were talking about, hence the lens, the lineup,
the
microphone. We have been developing that a lot, and our microphone utilizes fully this technology with the digital audio, noise cancelling, the capsule technology to choose where this audio comes from. So that's extremely advanced. So that's a good example of how we're using it, and even you have a look in the professional microphone area as well. So I think we choose our battles where there is a real added value for the customer to connect and make the camera talk to the accessory.
Where it makes sense for you to develop it instead of a third-party manufacturer.
So the connection to the lens and the exchange between the body and the lens is extremely important, that we have talked many times, for stabilization, for image quality, for breathing compression, and the same for microphones. So we try to use the ecosystem accessories that are the most relevant.
Yann, you just introduced a new app specifically for the FX30, 3, and 6, right? And it has all sorts of very interesting features, but as you know, we talked before, I'm wondering whether at least some of these features will actually come into the Alpha line. So the app for the Alpha line, I mean. So what do you think about this? Is this possible?
So it's interesting question, because we developed the monitoring and control app specifically for filmmakers, because for false color, waveform, and really, and peaking, for example. And that really was needed, I think, to be able to connect the smartphone directly, specifically, of course, an Xperia that has these amazing screens that you can team up perfectly well with the FX series. So the idea was really to have an not independent, but a specific app for the high-end video making, filmmaking lineup from our lineup. So there was an intention to separate from Creators Cloud app, where you do also have the camera control, remote control app available on Creators Cloud. That is a bit more simple, is more, I would say, wider public for the Alpha series. The new Creators Cloud is now replacing the old one, Imaging Edge, that you probably remember. So step by step, the new model will move to Creators Cloud. Now, do we want to bring Alpha models into the monitoring app? It's, I would say, probably unsure today. It's a good question. I think you will listen to the public, what they say, to your audience. if a lot of demand comes, I think why not bring them if there is a logic in terms of filmmaking with
maybe not all of the features, but at least some of them to integrate them into like I would say the existing app with like a version, like a bottom for stills, and then you change to video, and then you have at least some like peaking or something, at least some of
it's a good suggestion. I think we need to listen what the customers say.
If the audience is interested in that,
and then we have to, then it's for them to push on the forums and on the comments what they like, and that we try to do, and that's why we have meet or events like IBC and to listen to the feedback. So
that could be very cool. For sure. Why not all of your recent lenses have the really useful full-time DMF or direct-to-manual focus option? And is it possible to actually add it?
Yeah. So all the recent lenses, so to answer the question, the DMF function has been embedded in the camera, and the most recent lenses do not need this function to be activated anymore from the lens, as they are compatible with DMF. That's for photography. So in short, all the recent lenses, even if they don't have DMF button, have DMF by default by activating on the menu of the camera. In video, it's a bit different. We have created a new AF assist function that you also put in the menu, where the function is a slightly different than DMF. DMF for photography, you are in autofocus, you change your focus, the camera moves to manual focus and stays in manual focus and will not change the focus. In video, though, with the AF assist button, when you turn the AF ring, you pass to manual focus, you can slightly adjust your focus, but as soon as you release, the camera will start to follow again in autofocus the new subject you have put in focus. So giving you an example, if you're focusing on somebody, someone enters the frame and you say, oh, I want this person in focus, you slightly change your focus with the manual focus, it will go and focus on the person, the new person that entered the frame, and then it will start to track this person. While if it was as DMF, it will stay in manual focus, and all your sequence that you're recording, you would need to adjust your focus again manually. That wouldn't be very easy to do. So that's a decision in terms of workflow between photography and videography.
So basically the answer is every lens, no,
sorry.
Going back to the original question, every lens should be able to do that.
Yeah, we would need to be checking the older lenses, but for the new generation,
the relatively lenses, new one
should be no issue. You have the AF assist function available for that.
Is there a way for this feature to optionally also allow for automatic magnification? Because with at least some lenses, and this is an interesting question, when you change the focus, you also get into focus magnifier mode. And it really depends, I know from my experience, it depends on the lens. I'm not sure what's happening there. So, but this is really useful because sometimes you want to know that you're critically focusing on something.
I think the functionality exists as a custom button, assignation or allocation in English, on the camera. So you can add it manually, but it's not automatically, because I think your question is as soon as you turn the ring, you want to get in. We would need to double check, but as far as I know, I think in manual focus, if you have activated the function in the menu, you can get that functionality, but it wouldn't be working in DMF, for example. But to be checked,
Okay. And the last question I asked you last year, and I'm not sure what you can say about this, but the firmware, the big firmware update for the Sony A1 and Sony A7S III.
As usual, I can't comment on dates, unreleased information. What I comment on, we know the need, the will of the market. I can tell you the highest instance in Sony knows about it. So that's all I can say.
Okay.
And
let's leave it like that.
Let's see.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yann.
Thank you so much, Ido.
Thank you, and be sure to check out more videos from IBC on lensvid.com.